Hey, Karim, check it out. Our office is on the cover of the Willamette Week. I risked my life to get this copy, sanitize myself. I
And it says some crazy shit on the front too. What's it say?
know. Deliver us from evil.
Our Father who art in heaven,
Hey,
hallowed be thy name. Willamette Week be thy
how many
deliver.
Lebanese Catholics are there?
A lot, a lot.
Is there?
Oh yeah, it's huge. There's like the Mennonites, the Maronites. That's huge.
I had no idea. I'm Catholic, but we didn't have a lot of Lebanese folks at our church.
A ton of Syrians and Lebanese. Yeah, that like my family's Muslim, but there's a ton of there's like anyway. We won't get into
Yeah.
all that. Yeah, there's a
Well,
lot.
that's for our religious talk
And
podcast.
actually, the best falafel in Portland historically has been at Falafel Church, which is not what it's called, but they do a once a month fundraiser at this church in Lads Edition. It's all Arabs, and they go in the basement and they make the hell out of some beautiful falafel sandwiches. And they sell them as a fundraiser for the church. And they're
Ah,
now we call it Falafel Church.
may that still happen in the time of Corona. Well, thanks for hopping on the call with me today. I had a 2.5 hour phone call today with my fellow members in the Entrepreneurs Organization, and it was anyone that's involved in real estate. So I was talking to builders, developers, property managers, a lot of people that hold a lot of commercial real estate, investors in residential too, and I walked away from that with more things to think about, and also just feeling a little better about being in the residential market right now, and how the residential market keeps going even though we can't even actually get into houses, shows a lot of strength, just as our momentum to pull out of this. A couple of things I thought very just pertinent to residential real estate that we talked about is there was a home stager on there, and it turns out Spade and Archer has a program right now that they were, before this whole thing, getting ready to do touchless staging. So basically being able to stage virtually with clients. And they had actually got that up and going just a few weeks before the Corona thing happened. So they're still able to help people get things ready in their house. So that was pretty interesting, but they're also operating in Washington and California. And as you saw yesterday, Washington gave notice that everybody had until the end of day today, till midnight today, to cease doing any activity that would involve actually accessing a home physically. So they're really getting serious about shelter in place. I think that's coming here.
I was very interested to hear that, and I was interested to hear if you've heard anything from up there. I know that we have a number of agents that are licensed in Washington. Like, what does that mean for them? So all of the workarounds that we're doing here are obviously, this is all getting stopped there. So people are going to list homes, and you can purchase only if you never go in, an appraiser, an inspector, a vendor never goes in, etc. Like literally no visiting of the property.
Well, as it looks like right now, the Washington is
You're cutting out a bit.
Okay, Washington is working right now with the government to see if they can get a little bit more opening up to like get some access to homes, to get a photographer through to do a virtual tour. But at this time, it looks like they're locking it down. Like they're just saying that they'll take off. If RMLS shuts down, that means lockbox codes, that type of thing. You won't be able to use those to get into property. So there will be no access into property.
It's just a wholesale stop, cease and desist.
It is, but we'll see. But people still are able to do transactions that are in process, and they're still able to do transactions if they can do everything virtually. So I'm going to be curious.
Mobile notary is the piece in our transaction timeline where even in a cash purchase, there's still need for some documents to be notarized in Oregon. I know there's a big push for the RON laws, for the RON laws. Mm-hmm. I know First American Title has a lot of information on their site about that. I actually tweeted about it. So the RON laws are recorded online notarization or something like that. And so it's basically the last 20% of documents at closing that need mobile notary at least, if not an in-person title company signature. So this is the last thing. And they've been pushing for this for a while. First Americans, I think, is really leading the helm there.
Yeah.
But the Secretary of State is pushing for the governor to sign off on this. And once she signs off on it, then we're mobile, then we're electronic from start to finish at title,
Yeah.
which means touring homes, if people are comfortable virtually, then we got to get through inspection and appraisal. There's already some decrease around appraisal, but we will need third-party people to get inside, inspector and appraiser. But it's an interesting, I mean, it sort of strikes a chord, like, you know, I hope that what comes of the year of COVID is not that people's lives become less connected, you know, like,
Yeah.
that's.
I don't think so. There was actually going around right now a really beautiful article from Microsoft, the owner of Microsoft.
Bill Gates?
Yes, Bill Gates. Thank you, Dave. Bill Gates, and he's just writing about what COVID's going to teach us, and it was really beautiful, just about like what matters, how much, you know, what do we really need, how we've gotten to excess, and like how important like connections are. And so I mean, I think that, but I am encouraged somewhat to see that appraisal standards are loosening a little bit, and I mean, that just needed to happen.
That's a directive from Fannie and Freddie. Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's literally from the source. They're like, listen, here are the standards. We're lightening here, here, and here. In some cases, we can't do this regarding COVID. If you can't actually get in and then we can go to this. So it's become more of a prioritization rather than a definitive list of what's needed. It's now a prioritization, which is great. I mean, it's just, they're just saying, let's continue moving things forward.
Yeah, and Freddie Mae and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are also any of their, it looks like not just residential loans, but investment loans. They are making it, they're streamlining it for mortgage holders to get forbearance. So I had a couple of people on the call today that had experience with getting forbearance for tenants. Or for their clients who have tenants in the property.
Oh, for rental property owners.
Yeah, it was very streamlined. They say they got 90 days right off the bat without even really needing to do much negotiating or talk. It took like less than a few minutes. Very, very streamlined to be able to get that. So that is big relief for, I think, homeowners right now who are looking at lost wages or jobs. That they're going to be able to hold on to their houses. And this was something that I thought was really interesting inside this conversation, was that unanimously everyone agreed, this is no 2008. This doesn't feel like 2008. There's nothing similar about 2008. You know, everything from, a lot of people have a ton of equity in their homes right now. So people are, you know, are sitting on really safe assets. As we went into this, banks are very capitalized. Where we were at 2008, the whole reason that we were in this is that banks didn't have any capital and they weren't capitalized. So, you know, at this point, we have our real estate market that's heavily capitalized. We have the banks capitalized coming into this. And so no one expects to see, I mean, for one, we're just not going to see like the people that are like, I'm sitting on the sidelines and waiting for all the.
5 seconds. Go back 5 seconds. You cut out.
Oh, they're just saying that like all those people that are sitting on the sidelines waiting for the foreclosures and waiting for all this, you know, like what we saw in 2008. We're probably not going to see that. We're just not going to see.
That will not be the opportunity this time, right?
That's not going to be the opportunity. It's not going to be like blood in the streets in the real estate market. And so really what everyone's focus today was really just about like, how do we stay solvent? Like, how do we all get through this together? And Jeff Stevens from Abound Properties, who is also running a Facebook page right now that everyone that's watching this should check out. But it's Real Estate in the Time of Corona. You know, he said the fact that this is universal will facilitate healing for all. The fact this is universal means that we are, you know, everyone is in this together, and that's a really different situation than we were in. And
it is a very different situation. Also, the numbers coming into it are very, very different. Like you said, like it's not just banks capitalized and equity capitalized. It's also that American savings
Hmm.
is actually at like I think it's a 40-year high or something like that. It's an incredible number. Now, that is not to say that everybody's sitting on a big fat lump of money in their
No,
pockets.
no.
There is an equity, and we all know that. However, when generally speaking, the averages, we're talking about big numbers here, when the averages are on average more savings, it also means more people have money in their homes, more people have access to an equity line or other forms of savings. It also means that people know people know people.
Yeah.
And when savings in general are at an all-time high, it's better. When companies are at an all-time capital high, which they are, companies have more cash. American companies have more cash than
Hmm.
anybody else in the world and ever before in history. It's kind of an insane surge. American companies have more capital. That's not to say that restaurants aren't going to close and cafes aren't going to close, because they are.
Yeah.
But all of those things suggest the bigger economic future isn't nearly as catastrophic or uncertain as other times like 2008. Anyway, I just throw that in.
Yeah. No, and I thought it was interesting. We had a restaurateur that was on our call today, and she said that she's got a restaurant at the airport, and the airport's giving passenger counts right now. And the passenger counts are down, passenger traffic's down 85 to 90% from this time last year. So I mean, the airlines are getting decimated, and
How's the restaurateur doing?
Times are really hard for people in the restaurant industry. Like one of the things that I'm hearing from restaurant owners is that takeout, like people are kind of hoping, well, restaurants will just do takeout. Well, a lot of them, if that wasn't your business already, people don't think of you for takeout. So any restaurant that didn't already have takeout as a major component of their business, they're really going to be suffering. And those that did, oh, hugs, that's what matters right now. Hey, babe. And then restaurants that had takeout as a component, generally it's less than 20% of that. So
and even if you were an all takeout business, 100%. Think about how many clients you have today compared to 3 weeks ago that want to go out and go to a place where they don't know who's behind the counter and they don't know if they're asymptomatic, and they were going to say, hey, why don't you go handle a fucking salad and like toss around a bunch of shit and breathe on it and then give it to me. I feel like eating that right now.
Yeah. So I think, that's why I'm really glad to see that we actually have some stuff in place to help tenants, because, and help landlords too, so they can help tenants. I mean, that was the thing with the city that I was upset with, is when they came out and they announced, okay, you can't evict tenants. It's like, well, what do we do for on the other side? Because for every tenant, there's a landlord, and most of those landlords, at least the majority of all the landlords in our portfolio, that's just their one single home. Maybe they don't live here.
1, 2, 6, 7, 10. That's it. Yeah, not 400.
No.
Hey, tell me about who you spoke to about the forbearance calls, because that is a really hopeful scenario. I have 6 property, like I have a handful of properties. I know a lot of our agents have, Melissa was talking about. We have, and then we have a lot of clients with 2, 3, 4, kind of 1 unit, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting to me. And I, as I understood it, especially from one of the emails coming around, I think from Kim Parman, or maybe it was from Liz Murphy, that a lot of times, I think it was from Kim, a forbearance might mean, sure, here's 3 months, and then at the end of that, you're lump sum it for everything that's due. And I know that the law written for tenants looks to be like that. Like, sure, you can have 3 months, no payments, and your landlord can't do anything about it, which is great. By the way, I'm a fan. I'm not trying to say I'm a landlord on the other side of that. But then at the end of that, they then have, like, the clock starts ticking and they only have a very short period of time in which to pay that back. It's not forgiven. It's, and on a mortgage, what we hope for is that it's pushed out towards the end and it just extends your loan but that means somebody needs to take care of the mortgage company. So anything you've learned around that would be helpful.
Yeah, it sounds like from what I was hearing is that every case was different, and that they would push it out towards the end. Like there's no big balloon payment, because no one expects for in 3 months or 6 months for you to be able to just pay everything. So I called my bank today. I've got a line of credit with some build out loans for commercial property with Beneficial State Bank. And they gave me 2 options. We called and they already had options available. They were expecting the call, and it was like, okay,
just like that.
Yeah, just like that. I mean, and if you're contacting banks and they don't already have the information that should be coming from, if you call the banks and they don't already have the information available coming from government, because it does look like there's going to be that that they were going to pass, the federal government was going to pass 2.5 months of operating or 2 months of operating. It's a good time to call your bank, and even they don't have the information yet either, but ask them, who's the contact person I should be contacting about this, and what should I have in order? I think this is the time just to call banks and say, hey, I don't have an issue now, but I'd like to know who's my contact person and what do I need to have in order when and if I do need to call. But yeah, Beneficial today offered me either 90 days where I could push back payments, so they'll just make my loan 90 days longer, or I could go for 180 days,
90 days,
interest only.
Take 3 months off, and then it would be, sorry, you were cutting out. So take 3 months off, and then your loan would be extended by 3 months at the end of the term, like in 20 years or whatever it is.
Yep.
Or the second option, I'm sorry, you cut out.
Or it was interest only. So, or I could go my interest only, which on a build out loan, which are short terms, took my payment down from $4,700 to $800 a month. So it makes sense for me to go ahead and mitigate my risk and go to the $800 a month, and then pick up back on principal when we start to see recovery. So I'm just heartened with like how easy right now it is in the financial industry for people to call in and get the support that they need. I think a lot of people aren't making these calls because you're just like, oh, who has time for that? But it's quick.
I'm making pizza.
Yeah, right.
Making pizza.
I'm going to the church for falafel.
So I'm like learning about science projects for my kids and teaching Quinn about the difference. I taught Quinn that when we go downhill, I go faster because why? And he's like, and he figured it out. Decreased friction, my tires are thinner.
Yeah.
He has mountain bike tires, and when we go uphill, I go faster because I have a stronger engine. My legs are like 4 times as big as his.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, that's so great. Well, I'm in the office today, and in the kitchen of our office, we have crazy Aunt Lindsay from the Fab Lab, and they have been doing live streaming on Facebook for science lessons for kids that are being homeschooled right now. So
badass.
Yeah, I know, it's super cool to be able to use the office for something.
So badass. I love it. I love that that's happening there. I looked her up and shared some stuff with Leonie for our kids.
Yeah, it's so good. Well,
okay, what else? Builder.
I just think any client conversations. I had a client conversation yesterday. It was really interesting. A very, very experienced commercial investor that I know owns a lot of property in town called me because his son's in the market for a house. And he's like, what do you see long-term for the residents? We know no one has a crystal ball. And, and I told him things are still moving. And, if you can, we do have multiple offers, and we do, we're talking about some of the things we were talking about earlier about thinking that we'll see a recovery. And at the end of our conversation, and this again is a really experienced real estate investor of many years, was like, well, all right, well, cash is always going to be king. And I think if we find something now, we'll act on it. Yeah. And, and if not, we'll kind of wait and we'll see when the market comes back and we'll act then. So that's just, I guess that's just been kind of the general message.
Our messaging right now for buyers, I think Jessica would speak to this better than me, but it and the messaging that I'm hearing from other agents that have been writing on our listings and showing interest is, we more than ever, like, so this is true when you're selling into a December market. This is true when there's a little bit of a downturn. This is true when you're in a neighborhood that's still up and coming. This is true when there's any negative impact to the growth that you can see around a property. And currently we have a big question mark. What's it going to look like later in the year, next year? So that would be like a negative impact. It's not something driving further growth. And the thing is always the same. It's like 7 years is what we can see as a calendar or a schedule or whatever over time, that appreciation has always been a factor. There's always been appreciation in the 7 to 8 year period in Portland throughout history. So what we're not doing right now is saying buy in a house you're not quite sure about, in an area where you're not sure if you want to live, with a house that needs a bunch of work that you can't afford, on a Friday night in a multiple offer situation when you're pretty sure you're moving town in 2 years. Like, that's like the list of all the reasons why not to. But if you're like locking down and it's your third house and you don't have to sell the other one and you can sell it next spring, or you can sell now and we can see that the numbers even conservatively work and it's the right home for your family. And like, if mom comes and lives with you, there's that space over there. And if
Yeah.
mom doesn't come live with you and you wanted a roommate, or if your son comes back from college, or if he doesn't, in other words, there's these options for you that no matter how your life goes, you have these different ways of it working. That's the home. That's what people should be doing. And ultimately, it's like saying home is security. Buy secure, buy stable, buy conservatively.
Yeah.
It's the same message we've always been telling. It's
Yeah.
just that in some markets you can be a lot more flippant and go, well, like I bought a shithole in San Francisco for 900. I'm pretty sure if I put some paint and tile on it, I could sell it for $1.5 million next year. So like it really doesn't matter if you don't like it next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in a like 1,000% speculative market. It doesn't matter. I'm just, what I'm saying is our messaging has always been, yeah, let's just say right now you don't have all that flexibility. Let's say right now you just really want to make sure your home is secure. And then so
Yeah.
as a listing agent, that's the flip side of that, right?
Yeah.
Like make sure that the buyer is being reasonable and secure and they're not somebody that's going to bail 7 days into the transaction.
Yeah.
Don't let them in if they don't have a pre-qualification, if they're not pre-approved in a very strong way. Don't let them in if their agent can't sort of talk me into believing that they're a real contender. Don't let them in if it's not, they're not willing to really go for it. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You can do that. Anyway.
Well, I had a really great conversation with one of our own agents who's moving, and we were talking about, my last move 3 years ago, and how I thought I was going to rent a little bit until I found the right neighborhood. And I went to go look at rentals. And when I realized, oh my gosh, if I'm going to rent, I'm going to be paying the same that I am on a mortgage payment. I know too much about real estate to do that. So I went ahead and I actually bought something for a few years and wound up knowing that I would, improve its value, fix it up. And one of the things that, like, when we're making these decisions, remembering that there is a basis. It's not like I'm going to have a $3,000 mortgage. Okay. But if you rent, you're like, for my family to get in the school district my kids were in, I was going to have a $3,000 rent. So it's not as if I were saving money or taking the more prudent route to not buy at the time. So I think sometimes remembering, like, well, what are the realistic options, writing those out rather than getting fixated on, and making good decisions for the long term. And the good decision for my family for the long term was to, at that point, to buy a short-term solution, to not save me any money. It actually would have cost me.
And our great lenders have been having these conversations with people for years, right? Like, well, let's look at it. Let's look at your basis. Let's look at what's different. And then let's look at like your tax benefit at the end of the year. And then you can talk to your agent about the kind of home that makes sense for you, something that requires little maintenance or more, and how to improve and sweat equity. You put it all into the hopper. And what usually comes out in that equation is the thing that the American economy is literally built around and supports, which is home ownership. It's like the economy is built around it. It says we incentivize people to buy homes by creating 30-year mortgages. I mean, that's like a crazy amount of time.
Yeah.
Like nobody even lives in a house for 30 years anymore, and we still have 30-year mortgages. It's like it's skewed in favor of purchasing. It's not that everybody can do it, but it's that our economy is literally built around that.
Well, we also, there's an argument that our democracy is too. That the widest distribution of land ownership is actually what makes our democracy work, and people invested in their communities and other things. Well, one of the things, today things have settled down because we haven't had any new announcements or any new news. So we had one day of just like, okay, all right, I got my new normal on.
This is what we do now, right?
Which is hilarious because tomorrow we'll get a new, a new order. So I think, looking forward, preparing ourselves that we may be shut down, that we may be looking at what's going on in Washington and California is going to be really interesting. And so let's keep each other posted on that notary and what happens. And then, I'm going to be looking closely. I know our principal broker, Paul's looking really closely at Washington and our Washington agents and seeing what happens there. And hopefully too, that this restriction helps contain, most importantly, the spread of COVID and, without totally collapsing the market.
Yeah. Yeah, Washington's an interesting leader, isn't it, for us?
Yeah.
They're super, super close, which is, it's so weird to have that level in Washington and California. So who else did you talk to? What about builders? What did they have to say?
Yeah, the builders are still selling homes because people really need homes, and builders are still considered essential services. And so what
Sure.
they're
Yeah.
yeah, so what they're bracing themselves for is just to make sure that they're capitalized enough to keep going forward if things do turn. But right now they're engaged in building and people are buying and for them, because they were hit so hard in 2008, this feels like a very, very different,
Yeah.
very, very different story. And really what they were on the call, I think more too, is to understand like any of their real estate holdings. How does this affect them and what do they do about payments and some of those things, and how do they put themselves, after knowing what happened in 2008, in a position if property were to become cheaper, but nobody really sees that. Like nobody sees that we're going to see really cheap property to pick up again because of all the equity and capitalization that we had going into this.
Right. Did you have, how many builders were on the call with you? Just a couple?
Yeah, to get a couple pretty major, pretty big builders though.
Are they big ones though? They do more than like 20 houses a year. They do like
Oh yeah, big, yeah, the
hundreds,
big,
whatever.
big
The
division.
big, the big dogs. Yeah, that's
Yep.
actually super valuable, isn't it? Because they're sort of trendsetters, and
Yeah.
when a builder's doing that many units, and you can really see what they're doing. Did they have anything to say about what they're expecting with regards to loans? Because they usually have their finger on the lending pulse more than a lot of people, because are so they're so debt heavy. They're just like they're constantly in a rolling debt. They have
Mm-hmm.
huge mountains of debt that get paid off and continue forward and carry forward. They
Yeah.
avoid taxes by keeping it forward. So
So they all just, I mean, after going through 2008, they had the basically just the warnings um, of, making sure that they were putting themselves in a position not to have line of credits called, making sure that they were in contact with their banks, checking in. They had changed some banking relationships coming out of 2008 to banks that, actually were working with them to keep them going. So their message to the group was really just about being really conservative with your cash,
yeah,
keeping cash back and weathering it. And because if you can weather it, then you've got opportunities coming out. And I think the general consensus on the call was like, there are some people that are going to be hurting. There are some competition that's going to go away. So making sure that like you do what you need to do if you need to ramp all the way down so that you can come back up, not to burn and crash, but to like hold and come back, which I think is just really good. I mean, really good advice. And the other thing was like everyone I was hearing a few times was, this isn't the time to take advantage of any like super deals. There's not, this isn't the time to get opportunistic. Maybe 90, 180 days, there'll be time for opportunities. So I really kind of liked that.
Save, keep your cash liquid, make
Yeah.
make your calls to your banks, be ready to be ready to get on the phone with somebody at the bank, make some choices about how to deal with your lending situation, make sure your tenants know what their rights are. I know Living Room Property Management manages my properties, and I'm very, very thankful for that these days, because this is getting real complicated real fast, and they are doing a tremendous job of announcing to people, this is what's going on, these are your rights, this is what's going on. I'm anticipating in the next week or the following that I'm sure I'm going to get some notices about like, hey, cool, we're on hold, no more rent for a while. I'm sure there's restaurant workers and things like that, and I want to be ahead of that so that I don't have any fear about that. I want to be like I intend to be in 100% integrity with my tenants, and if there's an issue, bam, I'm going to take care of it, like a plumbing leak or whatever. In order to do that, it helps a lot to have a little bit of self-preservation in place. I mean, this is like the spiritual undertones of saving money is like, there's nothing sacred about money, but there is something sacred about being in a place where you're like, I want to be able to serve.
Yeah.
And I can only serve when my house is in order.
Mm-hmm.
And so I intend to make some calls. I walked into my bank today and discussed really briefly if the manager there, who I know pretty well, I see her all the time, if she's heard anything about home equity lines drying up, freezing up, stalling, stopping, anything like that, because I've heard from two lenders that last time we had, like in the 08 to 10 kind of era, when jumbo loans dried up, which this last week, they have been quite a lot. And they may come back really soon, but they may not. But when they dried up, it was sort of a precursor that home equity lines were next and that they started freezing up. For all the reasons you talked about earlier, this is very, very different. But I just wanted to feel encouraged, I guess, by talking to them. So I spoke to them, and neither one has heard anything, and they're still taking applications for home equity lines, and they're still asked to promote them. So as of yet, I just wanted to kind of drop that little note that I haven't yet heard anything about home equity lines drying up, and that's good for me personally. I run a team, and that's part of my plan B for this year. Should things get very difficult, that's part of my plan B, is drawing on our equity line for the year and readdressing things at the end of the year or early 2021. I think that's a reasonable place to have some fallback after savings and reserves.
Yeah, and for you to know, and for professional property managers and small businesses, Washington Federal Bank right now has $30,000 line of credits that they are just basing on credit score. So they've got some pretty generous lending, hoping to win some business in the Northwest. And Wells Fargo also. I had a call this morning with the property manager, my commercial property manager, Pingree, on my building on Alberta, and they said that Wells Fargo's been really working with them for some of their landlords with heavy restaurant tenants that they're anticipating not being able to pay, or they're already helping them write their way through this. And I know, in talking to Pingree and talking to, my own living room property management team, is that we know right now is going to be really, really busy, because we have to serve our clients, and figuring out the resources for our tenants, making sure we help our tenants through this, and that, that they can stay in place and they have some stability, because I know a lot of them may be losing jobs. And then on the other hand, helping our landlords as well, and making sure that we connect them to our resources. So we're also putting up all resources on the front of our website too, you just go to livingroomre.com. We've got a COVID-19 banner right up top, and it's got bank resources and answers questions. And
I was going to ask you, is that where we're putting all the bank things? So if we find out as a community, like as a living room community, out of the agent, if I call my bank and I found out this and that and this and that, I can share that with Whitney, and it can get posted there so that somebody else can go on there and go, hey, who's the Wells Fargo contact, and find it.
Yeah,
find your contact.
Yeah, our Seattle partner. So we announced a few weeks ago that we'll be opening up in Seattle, and Dustin Baker, who's up in Seattle, is opening the living room there. Obviously, with a real estate shutdown in Seattle, he went ahead. He put that website together for us, trying to support the team right now while we are obviously in a bit of a holding pattern there.
Yeah. What else? Pizza. Oh my God.
Pizza.
I made pizza dough yesterday. I now know that I can make one of my top 5 favorite pizzas I've ever eaten. Not the best.
The Dove Vivi?
But almost as good.
Okay.
Yesterday, I made a dough. It took me 15 minutes to make it. Last night after dinner, 2 hours after dinner, I decided it was a good time to try out and make a pizza, because that's what we needed at 10 o'clock last night. So we made a pizza, and it was amazing. And then today I made pizza and salad for lunch for the kids and Leone. And it's it's not top 3, but it's up there. And it $1 per pizza, not $47 per pizza.
Isn't that great?
It's pretty great. And also my kids are rolling and pressing, and I'm throwing pizza, and they're rolling little sauce, and it's fun.
You know what? That's way better. That's you got $470 back instead of spending $47.
That's good. And you, tell me your moment. Give me a moment for today.
Oh, my most joyous moment was that my girls when I came to the office, I left them their training today in the pool. They're both competitive synchronized swimmers, and we opened up, we have a pool in our backyard. We opened up the cover. It's cold, real cold, but they were just yes. They had a full routine for me, and they were just so excited to get back in. They're used to swimming 6 days a week. So it's been hard having this week and a half off, and they're doing Zoom calls with their team, and they're just so glad to see their people. And that's really risen spirits for us. So
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
All right. Well, thanks, Karim.
Yeah. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. Sounds good. Bye.